out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Hello, Tim.
Ryan.
Hi. Hello. Hello to Tim, and hello to everyone listening. Welcome to Dismembering Horror, episode 103 of Dismembering Horror. It's the podcast show where myself, Ryan McDuffie, and
myself, Tim Aslin,
we dismember a horror film every week, coming from us to you. We talk about what worked for us, what did not work for us, and anything else we found interesting or noteworthy about a horror film. We're on the quest to see the unseen, to revisit the less visited, to explore the less explored, by our standards, at least. Tim, anything to add?
I'm in pain.
Why?
Because my jaw is, like, out of whack, and it is painful, and now I hate my life.
Are you okay to talk? Because this is going to be a lot of talking on your end.
I don't think talking has much of an effect on it. Chewing is impossible.
Ooh, so you're drinking your meals?
I'm going to have to start. It sucks.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. Anything else you wanted to add about the podcast? What we're doing here?
Why? I just want to talk about my life.
Okay. Well, can you do it through the film that we watched, via the film that we watched?
Yeah. Here, I'll do it through the lens of horror. My jaw hurts and it's horrifying.
Great. All right. Well, Tim and I were here to do everything that I already said, and we're going to do everything I already said for the film from 1983. Was it?
What a year.
Yeah, just a few years earlier from our last film, Something Wicked This Way Comes. Ray Bradbury short story, or full story. I forget. I don't know. I haven't read it.
That's a good question. Is it like a novel or is it?
I don't know. But
it's a novel.
What excited me was that it is our second film directed by Jack Clayton and was a passion project of his. Does that name ring a bell? Do you remember his last film that we've watched, Tim?
No.
The Innocents.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, separated by, a decade and change, which is a great film, The Innocents, so it's fun to see him continuing what he does here.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. And under the guise of a Disney film, nonetheless, too. This film was part of they were trying, I think with like, I don't know what was it, like The Watcher in the Woods and Black Cauldron. This was part of Disney trying to go to sort of shed their image of being just completely like 100% family friendly in the purest sense. But we're like, hey, we can make stuff with gravitas in the dark sense. And, they got it.
Did they?
I guess so. I guess we'll figure it out. We'll get into it.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, yeah. Then let's get into it and discuss it. So, and we start out by doing that by watching the trailer for our film. So, Tim, you ready to watch the trailer?
Oh, gosh. Am I? I am so ready. I'm always ready for a good 1983 trailer.
Great. All right. Here we go then. The trailer for Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Hellfire storms are coming. An electric storm to clean your streets and wash away your troubles.
For every heart, there exists a wish.
You ever play the numbers, Mr. Holloway?
Me? Never take risks.
For every soul, there burns a desire.
Boy, he's up.
Always was. Smells to me like we're gonna have visitors.
But never whisper your dreams, for someone might be listening. And for every wish, there will be a price.
That was only the partial trailer for you listening, but Tim, for us, was that the longest trailer we've watched? It kind of felt like it.
It did feel long, didn't it? It's got to be up there if it's not the longest one. I mean, it's just sort of, I don't know, to me it's a little indicative of the movie as a whole.
Woo!
Personally.
All right, well, let's get into it even more. That means,
I think I fell asleep during that trailer, too.
That means, so after the trailer, Tim, can you segue that into your rating for the film? Would you tell yourself to avoid it, stream it, rent it, or buy it?
Yes, I can tell you what I would tell myself, which is to stream it if you really must.
Okay.
I just thought it was kind of whatever. There's there's elements that are cool that I enjoyed, but as a movie, I was pretty underwhelmed.
Man, I thought you'd be all over these elements in it. It's got the 80s thing going on, but going back to a classic Americana time. It's got the boys on an adventure. It's got like all the practical effects that we always talk about we love from the period.
That the effects really I dig a lot.
Well, this is similar to my Goosebumps rating, Tim, for me, where like I gotta give it at least a very high rent it. If I had, an excuse to watch a kid's movie more, I'd probably want to give it a buy it. But I don't know. I'd be close to giving a buy. I thought this was so cool. I thought this I remembered seeing this as like a middle schooler, like on a rainy day kind of thing, like being shown it in class. And whatever like the feel was that was there for me then, I don't remember the movie, but it still, just despite its datedness, instilled that feeling and carried that feel and tone. And like, it's one that's unique, but feels like it shouldn't be. The kind of the carnival coming into town, autumnal, like Halloween feel, kids on the mission. There's an evil afoot, a sinister man. Like, it's just so cool. I love it. And it feels like, oh yeah, it's one of these things, but it's not. Well, it is, but there's not a lot of them. There aren't lots of these things out there. And this is whatever it is, it's great. It like translates that kind of Ray Bradbury, like mystery and hauntingness, is there still in the screenplay, the lyricism, all that stuff. So yeah, man, I give it a very high rent it. I'd say check it out. I was never bored.
It's fair.
All right. Next is our summary.
Oh God.
We got a train rolling into town. Out of season. They're used to their summer carnivals maybe coming into town. This is in this town, it's like Midwest. It's basically like Main Street USA Disneyland, but like an actual town. Like whatever that Main Street Disneyland is based on. This is one of those.
Well, it's definitely the Midwest and like the northern Midwest, because the armless, legless guy, one missing one of each, is really into Northwestern football. Northwestern is in Chicago, so it's got to be in that. I think that's considered a tri-state area.
Yeah, it's in Greentown, Illinois.
All right, there you go, Illinois.
So what happens when this train arrives, Tim?
It becomes a bit of a wish fulfillment carnival with consequence.
Oh yeah.
And the young boys are young lads, Will and what's the other kid's name?
Jim Nightshade.
Oh right, Jim. Yeah, Will and Jim. They
both precocious in their own ways.
Yeah, no shit. They
Wait,
you know,
what
they
does that?
get
What does that mean? What?
I'll get into it.
Precocious to a fault, Tim.
Don't you worry. Will and Jim get wrapped up in the mystery of what's going on with this carnival. The
So they just can't help but
maybe a
explore
little
it.
too on the nose, aptly named Dark. Darks. What is it called? The guy's name is Dark.
Yeah,
I
he's
mean,
Mr. Dark, so it's Dark's Carnival.
I mean, for fuck's sake, can we get any more like on the nose?
Could we get any cooler and appropriate? No.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of them seeing some shit, seeing that the carnival has an insidious, malevolent sort of, aspect to it, and then going a little bit on the run
too.
Yeah. They got to go on the run and not get caught by the. I guess you could kind of call her like the witch of the carnival in a way.
Well, and Mr. Dark pursuing them himself.
Yeah, and then it wraps around with Will's dad and his what would you call his sort of melancholy outlook on life? It's part of what feeds the carnival and gives it its power is people's despair.
Yeah, he's someone who says, well, that's why I never take any risks. He has one big standout regret in his life that he kind of feeds into his, well, now that I'm older and way past my prime, maybe it's too late kind of mode.
Yeah, regret and yearning for something that you failed at or never achieved, or like whatever seems to be the root of what gives the carnival its power, and they are feeding off of people's versions of that.
Small town people with big dreams.
Right. And and then antics ensue.
Oh, do they? Indeed.
Is there anything else that's really important in the summary?
I mean, they win at the end. They do defeat the carnival.
Yeah, it's a Disney movie. They win.
You say that. So, I mean, okay, we'll get to it.
Well,
some pretty shocking stuff in here for a Disney movie.
It's pretty intense. Yeah, I agree. There's some good scary scenes, for a kid, for sure. I imagine if I had seen this as a kid, it would be memorable. I wondered going in if I had seen it and just forgotten about it, but definitely not, because I would have remembered some of this stuff.
Yeah. Great.
Which is weird, I think 83, I bet my parents were like, nah, that's too scary for him. Because we had the Disney Channel that year, I think, actually, was the year we had the Disney Channel.
I didn't know it was that early. Wow.
Yeah, because I was still in Indiana. We moved in 84, towards the end of 84. So there was 1 year, I think, of us in Indiana where we had the Disney Channel. It was a big deal. I watched a lot of Tron. Well,
I don't know if it would have been on TV at the time, but they could have taken you to see it in theaters.
Oh no!
I mean, they had the opportunity to.
That wouldn't have happened.
Well, we're here. I'm sorry, your kid self couldn't see this film, Tim. Meaning, your kid self in you now and here was not present in your present viewing.
Oh, it really wasn't. I tried. There were moments.
Great.
I did a lot of, when things happened, I did yell. Like things that were cool. I was like, oh shit, this movie just got interesting.
Well, okay, we got to get into this then here. So let's move on to our section here, our first section. You ready, Tim?
I'm ready.
All right. What worked?
What worked?
get this out of the way up top because I agree with him. I always have fun reading the Roger Ebert reviews.
Oh no.
here's I think this is how he ends it. And I just wanted to say it because I totally agreed with it and got me excited, and I'll be repeating it throughout. Ebert says of Something Wicked This Way Comes, in its descriptions of autumn days and its heartfelt conversations between a father and a son, in the unabashed romanticism of its evil carnival, and even in the perfect rhythm of its title, this is a horror movie with elegance. And yeah, I mean, that's what he said. This is me talking now. I completely agree with him. There's not many horror films I can think of that there's just this like, so many good horror movies do it. So I'm trying to think what's more specific. I was going to say like a always present, omnipresent evil, but I think it's just so specifically that this one is of that, like the things I already said, that the gray, autumnal, Midwest, that early, 1900s feel. It's just such a mood. It's just such a mood. So I said the carnival coming into town and just like being a kid and having to just check it out because of course we have to, then getting caught up on this adventure. Yeah. And okay. And I guess to get what we were kind of almost going to get to, Tim, was, talk about some of the dark stuff in it, which absolutely worked for me. Just some of the more dark standout moments where I was like, wait, hold on. This is what they were pushing kids movies at the time. The biggest one was when we had, was it Will? Well, both of them see it, but Will sees himself get decapitated and we see his decapitated head off of his body bleeding. Like, really? Wow. Yeah, sure. For kids. And then also similarly, like we have then when they're hiding in like the storm drain and Mr. Dark is threatening the dad, tell me where they are. He's just squeezing his hand out of sheer like anger or magic or whatever. And to the point where it just starts bleeding. And then the blood drips down onto their faces in the gutter. Like, yep, here we go. But I think, do you have anything to add on all this? Cause I'll keep going.
The spider scene is a standout, I think.
Yeah. That was cool. Yeah, that was creepy. Okay, well, that's just a different part, but I wanted more thoughts on the dark stuff that I was talking about.
I mean, Mr. Dark's death is pretty intense.
Yeah. What did you like about it?
I think more than anything was me going, I was like, dude, as a kid, that's the stuff that I would be like, it would stick with you.
What about it? Can you lay it out for us? Oh my God.
Well, so he ages and sort of gets prunified, I guess you could say, by electricity. He has sort of an obsession with lightning and thunder, the lightning and the thunder. And his demise is the carousel that can it can age you or it can de-age you, depending on which direction it's going in.
Yeah.
And he kind of gets trapped on it by, I guess, would you say that the lightning and the lightning was kind of the thing that was like keeping him on the carousel?
It malfunctions.
It's like trapping
somehow.
Him.
Yeah. It superpowers it.
Yeah, and he ages and decays. And it's, it's kind of like in Qui-Gon when it goes in stages where we see the acceleration of his age. I don't know. He goes from kind of wrinkly to like pretty gaunt to like gnarly, like hair's falling out, like faces just decaying, to just like a husk.
God,
and then a husk that one of his little buddies walks over and just picks up and carries away.
Yeah. I could talk about freaky at any age, but especially as a kid. It was extremely visceral and just disturbing. Yeah.
There's a couple shots of Pam Grier's character,
the Dust Witch,
that were which were pretty freaky. I think that would have scared me a fair amount as a kid.
her introduction.
got a good yell out of me.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Oh shit!
Yeah, she was good in it just by having a presence. That was so good.
Yep.
Okay, well, yeah. So moments throughout super dark, but I think what got to me in my vague memory as a kid of it, and then what really got to me this time, on top of all those specific moments, now still as an adult, or you could say the kid in me, was that it's not just the dark stuff in the sense of individual moments, but like I always felt this present threat through it, where, like, let's say I didn't know if the dad character was going to get killed or not in the library. And like so often in these kids films, it's always like the kids are separate from the parents and then they have to save the parents at the way end is when they're finally turned to skeptics to, listening to the kids. But the way that it works in, and I should say it was Jason Robards as the dad, Charles Holloway.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Jason Robards has never been young.
Right.
My God.
Yeah. He's great. He was so great in this.
I mean, honestly, Jonathan Pryce and Jason Robards are easily two of the greatest actors, like, of all time.
Oh, and they both kill it in this movie.
Yeah.
They're so good in this movie. They bring that gravitas to it. And any of their scenes together, their big library match off that they have, where Jonathan Pryce, Mr. Dark, is he's aware of his regrets and that he wants to be young, all that stuff. And he just tears at his heartstrings about it. And Jason Robards just has to do what he does or doesn't do. They're both so good. Could go on about them. But the idea so I was saying was like there's the threat that it feels like the parents could actually get hurt, and we're seeing these adults who we sympathize with, because of their dreams getting delivered, and then getting the Twilight Zone retribution in return. Like that's really scary stuff as a kid, of this idea of this, I don't know, it's something about this sense of this safety, in parentals, or at least something that's different from all the evil and the hauntingness, getting just as wrapped up, if not more so than you, as the kid.
I think, the attempt that I think, I don't know, for me, never quite landed where I think it could have, but like, the attempt and execution for the most part was generally pretty good. It just didn't like really hit home for me, but the theme and the construct of a kid whose dad is older, that having a kid have to kind of see his dad as an old man.
Yeah.
And the more, looking at the mortality of that, like knowing that your dad is probably not going to be around like other kids' dads are.
Yeah.
And the shame almost that Will feels toward his dad for being kind of a, I don't know, what do you call it? He's not a coward. He's just kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
Like,
he's a librarian who's never left the library.
Yeah, and he, Will feels ashamed of him in a way.
No, I mean, that did get to me, this feeling. Maybe is that too, not just. I mean, that's what works well for the themes I was already talking about. But him being older age is feeling that mortality in your parents at a younger age and having to come to terms with that. That is really heavy stuff. Maybe not dark isn't the appropriate word like I've been using, but yeah, it's heavy and goes there to that place.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows this. Well, I assume everybody knows this moment or has the moment of like realizing that their parents are humans, right? Like that they're just people and they are fallible and they can be hurt and they can potentially die and do eventually. And that whole moment, I think, in childhood when that, for whatever reason, circumstantially hits home. I remember when my dad, we were on like a pretty intense hike, and he just misstepped and like gashed his shin open, and like really, you know, it hurt obviously because that shit hurts. But like seeing him hurt and potentially not able to like continue on really like hit me hard. I don't know how old I was. I was actually probably 12 or something like that. So
Not
I wasn't
too far from the kids in this film.
Yeah. But I remember it really like feeling bad and weird and like uncomfortable of like, oh shit, like he's not this kind of superhuman, superhero-y feeling person in this moment. And that freaked me out.
Yeah.
Yes, I just think that that's a really important and like impactful moment that pretty much everybody experiences on some level, and you know, it's a good foundation for a story for sure.
Yeah, and to have that feeling, like I felt it as you were describing it, and to sort of have a horror film utilize that, which is maybe one of the unique things about it that I was trying to articulate earlier. It was like, well, what's that? What's the uniquely, you know, horror or dark mood that this film sustains? And that's a big part of it. And then throw on top of that the idea, like I said, exploiting people for just their deepest desires and or regrets. Like that, that's, I mean, how relatable.
Well, it is kind of like Qui-Gon in that sense that it's
you mean the first story?
It's allegorical, right?
Yeah.
Like every story is sort of allegorical in Qui-Gon, and this has that same kind of vibe where it's like, in a way, each of the main characters, well, each of the town's characters could be their own story.
Yeah.
And you know, it's all kind of it's got a fable sort of don't get too greedy or don't get too lustful and don't get too prideful. It's all of those things.
Well, it's great because we do get all those little stories within it. Like I love that we have all these little sub stories and arcs within it. All adding up the theme from different angles.
So just real quick, let me think about this. So you've got, I mean, it is essentially the 7 deadly sins, right? Because the woman, the teacher is pride, the barber is lust, the banker is greed, or not banker, what is he? He's
it's like the cigar shop.
Cigar guy, yeah. Cigar guy is greed. Who else is there? The bartender? Who's the bartender?
He's the
he's the guy with no, yeah, so what is he?
The guy with no limbs, yeah, who's the ex-football star.
Yeah, what would that be? Well, it kind of falls apart there, I guess. But
I was just smiling because
some form of like not being able to live in the present, or like, you know, like it's kind of pride too, but not exactly.
I feel like this is a thing you do.
It's
Tim.
envy. It's envy.
You're always you're. I like your head always goes there. Is like, okay, can we map it over the 7 deadly sins?
It does. It's such a common, I mean, and you know, universal thing. That's why they exist, right? Mm-hmm. So he's envy, and then what's Jason Robards? He's kind of sloth in a way, where he's just kind of given up, or something like that. Because nobody's gluttony. I don't think, but anyway, it's always good to have those lines in the water, so to speak.
Yeah.
It just makes it, because it's so universal. We all feel those things, and we all go, "Uh-oh, you're in trouble."
Yeah.
But the allegorical nature of the story, I think, is really strong. And, you know, to be honest, like most of my critique that we'll get into, I think, comes down to kind of aspects of just technical execution. But so
the things that if you're a kid, you don't really care about or pay attention to.
That's exactly right. I had that thought at a certain point where I was like, the things that are kind of putting me off, a kid will just, it just doesn't exist, right? Like, they're gonna if anything, they're gonna fill in the gaps themselves and make it that much better.
Shout out to our friend Marissa, who loves this movie, and when we found out was doing it, was excited.
Talk about weird too. I mean, she just totally randomly, without provocation, brought this movie up like 2 days before we watched it.
Yeah, and I feel like that's evidence of this movie is somewhere just below cult, as far as a lot of kids, people our age having a memory of it as a kid.
Yeah.
Whether,
I wonder actually if this doesn't make sense. I was going to say maybe I didn't know it, or it wasn't like a thing that I came across because of age, because you and Marissa are closer in age. Like, you're younger than me. I'm like, did I just miss it somehow? Maybe. I don't know. It's weird that I've not seen it, I think.
Right.
It seems odd, but somehow managed to slip through the cracks.
Yeah, I know. I really feel like, you would have seen this one.
I'll tell you what. I've seen the cover of it for sure. So it must have just been one of those things where it's like you go to Video Barn and you see it a million times, but you never actually rent it.
I mean, yeah, and it's not streaming on Disney Plus. Like, you have to get a DVD or a VHS to watch it, and even those are not cruddy. Like the version, the DVD master, it's like not a good looking print or whatever.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. But
yeah.
So anyway,
I mean,
to the movie,
we mentioned how great, we thought Jonathan Pryce was as Mr. Dark, and I just specifically mentioned how he is a big part of that sense of like a real threat. Like I think the film does such a good job, and I just love this so much, where it never fully ruins the kind of the mystery of how big is this power and where exactly does it come from and what kind of evil is afoot here. We get like just the perfect fun glimpses of it with Jason Robards looking at his library books. And there's something with like a devilish bent to it where it's like he could be a kind of practitioner, working for the devil, something like that. But you get the sense, like, how are we gonna beat this guy? Like, he's magic. He knows what's up. He can like tell when you're lying. He has all these powers. But there's just this perfect line where it's like, yet he still has to like physically look for them. And those are some of my favorite things in the way that he did that in this film. Like, we have this sort of I don't know if it's quite the centerpiece, but maybe more toward the second half of the parade scene,
right,
where I just loved it. It's kind of like, the hiding, the evil hiding in daylight kind of thing where everyone can see you, where they're throwing here's the carnival, walking through town, promoting their carnival, putting on a parade. But
Jim comes around a corner and he's like, hey, a parade.
Yeah. No, hold on. That's him. He's looking for us. And he is. I love Jonathan Pryce, Mr. Dark. He has this glare. He's just looking. You can tell he's just looking for the kids. And no one knows what he's doing. No one knows what he can just be doing, up to his evil deeds, just out in daylight that with everyone looking at him. And same with when he's in the library trying to track him down. Oh, like the way the door opens and we don't see him come in, and then he's just like next to Jason Robards all of a sudden. Oh, love it.
Oh my God. You just reminded me of a hilarious edit in this movie. It's really early on when they're introducing the townsfolk, and Jason Robards is I think he's just gotten a cigar and had his little conversation with the cigar guy. And then the barber comes out and starts doing his little shtick about, looking for a woman who smells like perfume or whatever the fuck. And there is an edit where it goes from the barber he's kind of standing in the doorway of his barber shop. And then they cut to Jason Robards for just a reaction. And then they cut back to the barber and he's in a completely new position next to the barber pole. And it's so super jarring, but like very comical. Like it's as close to just like popping up from off screen as you can get with just an edit. And I remember, like, I actually quite like it just because it's just so sort of like charming in a way of this, just it doesn't quite fit, but it's fun and funny, and it actually kind of speaks to the vibe of the film in general, of that everything is a little bit off in this town, and that it kind of sets up how things start to fall apart. I don't know, I doubt that it was intentional, but like it has that kind of precursor vibe to that, which I really appreciate.
Right.
And there's little edits here and there that are fun. I mean, that the spider scene is full of them. I mean, just full of amazing edits. So,
yeah.
I wonder who edited it. Somebody awesome.
There were 2 editors on it, actually, because I will get
Barry
into
and Art.
Jonathan. Just last thing on the parade scene. Not only, just elements of the town being a little off, but the carnival itself being more than just a little off. In the parade scene, I thought it was so cool. Again, like kind of hiding in plain sight. You had Mr. Dark's cronies, like they had clown makeup on, so he's like, oh, it's like a little person with a clown with as a clown makeup, but you see it's like there's clown makeup painted over this like weird, like as if they're actually like a weird devil creature or something. Like they have the prosthetics to make them look like a goblin or a demon or something like that. And then they just paint like a mask over that to pass. I thought it was such an incredible touch and really eerie.
Yeah, I think the major strengths of this movie are the art direction, the creature design, and at times, I mean, it's sort of art. It's I guess it would kind of fall under. It's both cinematography and design, because that Hall of Mirrors sequence visually, forget about the 1980s green screen sort of effect thing, but just how it's shot in the mirror, what do you call that? Hall of Mirrors.
Yeah.
Is so cool to look at. And like, it's not always the case with this movie. There are definitely parts that I kind of was like, visually, I was like, that's lame or whatever. But there are shots in this movie that are fucking awesome.
I mean, every time there's this, and it's throughout, some sort of gorgeous matte painting shot of like...
Those are really wild to me.
Of like a red sky is a lot of them. The tornado coming in. Oh my God, all that stuff.
Yeah,
is
the cloud. Like anytime you get that cloud effect that was... how did they do that? They kind of... It's like you're dropping... Oh shit!
Oh right,
it's underwater, like how you actually create that.
So not necessarily the background matte shots, but like doing the tornado as by putting some kind of thing inside of water and getting
it's like ink in water. It's like white ink or something in water is how they do that. I forget. I've watched a thing on I think it was Spielberg or
probably the Poltergeist making of.
It's either that or Close Encounters. It's one of those. It's so cool. I love that effect.
God, I know. Give that to me any day over the CG stuff.
Let's try to make that. Like, let's go make that just for fun.
I'd love to. I mean, that's how they did the tornado, and like I loved that. The whole end tornado set piece. Like not just the stuff we were just describing, but like the effects of the parts of the carnival, the buildings getting like ripped out and taken away into the tornado. Like I was just trying to think of that nowadays. It's just okay. It's this CG thing, blah blah blah. Doesn't have any weight, doesn't have any feel, but. However they did, it's probably miniatures or whatever, but oh my God, everything in that end sequence as far as the tornado related stuff was just so cool. I mean, God, Tim, it was so cool. It made me so happy. I also love.
I'm happy for you.
The effect, I think my favorite overall effect was the carousel scene where it's the one at the end that we already talked about was incredible with his death, but how it's built up with his red-haired crony riding backwards to turn into his little red-haired boy self.
Yep.
Like, it was that kind of image trailing itself effect with like a bit of a strobe and discoloration mixed in there. It was like familiar, yet I hadn't seen it executed with sort of this, however this was specific to itself.
It's pretty freaky too.
Yeah, it looked
that's
so
a
neat.
pretty scary scene, even though there's nothing really overtly like specifically scary. It's the vibe of how that's filmed really is unsettling.
Oh, I mean, that just captured the movie there for me. That was so neat. I loved that scene. Yeah, I hadn't seen anything like it in anything we've watched. And then that he turns into the little red-haired boy. God, talk about the creepiest stuff in the movie. Like the way he just didn't speak, and he like was getting the kids themselves in trouble by throwing rocks through windows. Oh my God,
Right.
He's so creepy.
Shit.
Yeah. Oh God, I don't know that performance, the casting, whatever combination of stuff. That little red-haired boy really.
Can you imagine
creeped
as
me
an
out.
adult being reverted? You're still your adult brain. You know everything that you know as an adult, but you get reverted into like an 8-year-old kid's body. You would fuck with so many people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, just imagine what, like, it just seems like it's just a formula for you to just be a creep. Like, as a little kid, because you know shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, little kids are, they're whatever. They're innocent. They don't know, their ass from their elbow or whatever. But, like, if you're an adult brain in a little kid,
I give
freaky.
kids a little more credit than that. But I do think about that, actually. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, the carousel scene, the end scene, so good. It's hard. Like, I just want to stress how the mood again and the kind of atmosphere, but I can't think of anything to actually add. So,
Yeah, I'm just trying to sort of scan back through in my brain moments that stuck out. I feel like we've kind of covered most of them.
I had a lot of fun with the two lead kids. This totally reminded, like, of me and whatever friend, whoever best friend I had at the time kind of thing. Where just the sense of adventure and pursuing it. And I don't know, and the way you kind of, we're always, always sticking up for each other, but always pushing each other too. I don't know. It really hit that nostalgia, not in the movie sense, but in a real life sense for me.
Yeah.
This is great.
At least it worked for you.
Yes, this is what worked. It all worked. Sorry, the datedness.
I'm not sure. There's. We'll talk about it, obviously, but
well, I'm good to talk about it now. If you want to get into it, I think we should.
I'm just trying to think if there's any. Oh, what I was gonna say is, I back to the parade scene, the real sort of reveal of the townspeople who have been changed. I think that is probably the scariest element to me as a concept, and once you see them, that they like the barber, for example.
Well, no, like I was saying, the adults aren't safe. Yeah,
he's become. I mean, they've all become these new kind of imprisoned characters in their own. They're a prisoner of their own, desires, and now they're being paraded, so to speak. And there's something really upsetting to me about that I feel like it's, in a way, it's the cautionary tale aspect totally makes sense. Like, they got what they deserve, so to speak, in that, in the framework of like a cautionary tale. But the idea of them getting that consequence unwittingly, they kind of fall into it because of their desires. I don't know what it is about that, because there's no there. I think it's that there's no like take backs, right? It's like you can't go, oh shit, that's not what I meant.
Right.
You know, like, this isn't what I wanted.
It's that
and
kind
there's
of
something really freaky to me about that.
It's like the fate worse than death kind of sense of being trapped. And then for me, it's the helplessness, as if, you know, you to the extent of being paraded around and no one notices or cares.
Right. And then, like, they don't go back to normal, right? Like, it's not like they're saved at the end.
I don't think so. I was looking for it. I don't think
There's
so.
to me, there was no indication of that.
And yeah, again, that's kind of why I really felt the stakes in this film on different levels.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much it, I think, for me Yeah, I think that's it.
Great. I'm glad you mentioned that because I agree. And now let's hear all about what did not work. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. What did not work?
He's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
Okay. Should I get mine out of the way? And I think it will segue into what you have.
Sure.
Okay. So it bugged me when they were visiting the school teacher. And, you know, and with the little red-haired boy who is the crony of Mr.
Right.
Dark. And the little boy, he throws a rock through her window and then, you know, runs away or whatever. And then when she comes out and yells at them as if they did it rather than just staying there, the way they run is just such an admission of guilt. It just bugs me so much. I'm like, oh, no, they just stay and tell her, oh, no, I swear it wasn't us. I swear it wasn't us. Nope. They book it. That really bugged me. It's just a thing that bugs me in real life, I guess. And
I mean, I've definitely been in their position in my life as a kid. I remember definitely being like standing next to the kid who did the thing and then getting the blame for it. That's a horrible feeling.
It's the worst feeling in the world for me, is to be telling something, you know, with someone with conviction, no, this is actually how it happened, you're wrong, and then to still be accused. But that's so fearful and important to me, like, even as a little kid, that, like, I would typically stand up to be, like, you know, to insist and just insist. And just, I was willing to die on that hill. Even as a wee one. And then I didn't get the mummy in the town. Like, there was like, I guess it was at the library or some little museum area. They had like a mummy that was already there and had an evil ring that like started glowing or something.
But
there was also
it's
a mummy
Pam
in
Grier.
the carnival. How she was already there in the town?
See, that I didn't really understand that, but like, it seems like maybe the explanation is that, oh God, it's weird because like a scene later, you see her glass sort of sarcophagus on the train coming into town.
Yeah.
But she's already like or whatever, however you describe her getting out of it in the town museum thing. Very confusing. I don't quite understand it. Maybe by oh God, by Jason Robards, you know, feeding the museum version of that lady in her little tomb with his being depressed, that unlocks the power of the carnival to show up. Or all of the townspeople, like maybe it's all come to a head at that moment, and then because that sarcophagus thing shatters, then the carnival can show up, and then she's transported as an entity to
we
them.
We don't need to get
like
into
that.
it. Whatever. The point was, it was confusing, and it still is, even with you trying to explain it and to make sense. And then the big finale, like, as much as I loved the ideas and like the performances of this sort of Jason Robards versus the mirrors and his regrets. Yeah, the effects and the budget did fall a little short. Not totally to where it killed it for me, but just so where I can, you know, put it in this section, what did not work.
Yes, I have a big problem with the... God, how do I describe this? There's a lack of commitment in the filming and in some of the performances of that final scene. That does not include Jonathan Pryce, because he sells the fuck out of his death. But the kids, and it's just really clunky. Like Jason Robards running and grabbing Jim off the carousel. It just feels clunky. It doesn't look good. It just feels lame, kind of like, they just, it's like they didn't have a stunt person on set to sort of like get a good version of that. They
don't really stress the beats where they should, maybe.
Yeah, and like then the whole beat of Robards being like, we have to be happy because their power comes from us being sad or being from our despair or whatever. It doesn't land. It's like when actors are resisting totally letting go and being super like just goofy, weird, like let it all hang out. It doesn't quite get there. And the kid, Will, doesn't match what Robards is trying to do. And it just feels like really stilted and weird and doesn't sell the specific goal of that moment at all to me. Because it's not matching the intensity that Jonathan Pryce is having as he's dying. Those are not on the same page.
I feel like it's got a lot to do with just what a horrible thing to say to a kid. Like, I get what they actually meant by it, but Jason Robard having to deliver the lines that essentially say, don't cry right now. Like, that ain't good. And I could feel like he was probably said something about it and just had to do it anyways.
Yep. It really felt like, definitely felt like an actor kind of going, yeah, but what you're asking me to do doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. And you're trying to, fit this thing in the wrong shaped hole. And I'm like, I'll do it, but it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Because rest assured, Jason Robards knows what's up.
Yeah.
Like, that dude is no fucking joke. So
I mean, for me though, it's so inconsequential as far as like, I don't know. I was still into it.
Yeah. Overall, fine. Like, point taken or whatever. But it bums me out when you couple it with the previous climactic moment of Robards in the Hall of Mirrors, sort of reliving the thing he has the most guilt over of saving Will when Will almost drowned. That whole moment felt really clunky to me too, and it just didn't have the gravitas. I don't know exactly why it felt shallow, but it felt shallow.
There's a lot of effects going on. I do think that the
effects didn't help right there.
As cool as they are in moments, I feel like it shoots itself in the foot a little bit, as if Disney was like, hey, can we just add 30% like more like visual magic happenings and just like sound effects to accompany them? And it just kind of being like, I don't know, okay.
It's an interesting example of like, I get the sense that in that sequence, when what we're supposed to kind of get from that sequence is that Robards is coming to terms with his guilt over not being the virile young man who can save his son from drowning. And the reason he comes to terms with it is because Will expresses the fact that he loves him in spite of that Will loves Charles in spite of this failure.
I could, more specific, I could say I just loved that was the classic power of love and family is what saved him. I was so suckered into it from that.
No, I think that moment works. What I think undercuts that moment is a production choice that the result of that success is that the mirrors all shatter around them. And so they've shattered the illusion of this guilt, and they're figuratively, and they're literally shattering the mirrors of that. The reflection of the guilt is being shattered, right? That's the sort of conceptual idea of that moment. And they clearly, it's just a choice. They decided, instead of actually shattering a bunch of mirrors, that they were going to do this kind of effect, nebulous in darkness, where you see a lot of glass shattering. It just doesn't match up with the moment. It feels like a cheap version of what it could have been. And so maybe it's a budget constraint, but maybe they were superstitious and didn't want to actually shatter some mirrors. That's fine, whatever. But there are ways to do it to have that impact. And they chose a particular version that I think undercut the moment.
Well, so is this just an example of the way the effects were not working throughout? Because you're just talking about some really specific things, but like, what as a whole made you bored and not want to watch this? Because like, for me, is just anything like that was just 3 times over, overshadowed by all the mood and everything else that was working. We talked about.
I think it's it's a taste thing, but there's something about the I'm sure there is a term for this. This is probably not what you would call it, but it feels kind of Pollyannish, where it's like, it's a little too Norman Rockwell-y light feeling of like, oh, hey, we're this small, quaint little town, and here are the characters, and here are the players, and you can do all of those things without being cartoonish about it. And I think that's where I start, almost right off the bat, where I was like, it doesn't, to me, need to have... It feels to me like they are playing to what they think kids think is like, they're acting like it's for kids in certain moments. And then in the darker moments, it's clearly... they are not, they're not worried about that. So I'm like, those things actually feel like they don't match up. And so it's almost like a consistency in tone that bugs me. This
is fascinating because, okay, we'll get into things of note, but I feel like there's a reason for all this.
I bet. So there's the kind of quaint, here's what it feels like they saw A Christmas Story. A Christmas Story? A Christmas Story. Yeah, the one with Ralphie and the... yeah. Right? It feels to me, I don't know if that came out before or after this, but it really feels like that. That is a cartoonish version of storytelling. It's for kids, but it's really... everything is a joke. Like, they are making a very specific stylistic choice that this is... it's lighthearted and jokey and a caricature sort of movie.
By having that narration at the beginning, like both of
the
those
narration thing. There are scenes where, like in A Christmas Story, where like they literally do like cops and robbers run around in fast motion and chase each other. You know what I mean? They are accepting this style. It's like saying, oh, because this movie takes place in kind of like the 30s, that we need to ham it up like the 30s movies did. And when you couple that with the depth and darkness thematically and in the action of some of the darker moments, it just doesn't feel right to me. And it feels a little insulting to the audience when you're in the cartoon version of things. And I think very early on, I just felt kind of like, I don't feel like I can get in because I feel like it's just there's this inconsistency.
Now, would you say that as kind of well done in itself and memorable theme-wise as the score was the score a big part to blame for that? Because as soon as you said kind of Norman Rockwell, like here the character players, the music, I feel like definitely pushes it in that direction.
Yes, it does. And I don't remember what the moment was, but I do remember having the thought they were doing this kind of like almost like a waltzing tuba sort of moment to like emphasize that it's a goofy moment, and I was like, that's the problem. There's this weird on the nose aspect in a movie that should not be on the nose to me.
Yeah.
Like it's actually really hurting the movie.
Yeah.
Like, you know, for example, the Dark Crystal. Dark Crystal's a pretty dark movie. It's super consistent from top to bottom, right? Like we're in this fantasy world. We stay consistent with all of the elements. And Neverending Story does the same thing, right? Like it's really consistent in its top to bottom execution, even though you do have different realms, and
I don't know.
That's fine.
Dark Crystal, it does. I think I'd much prefer the director's cut or the original cut for Dark Crystal without the narration. Even to the point they had it where you couldn't even understand what they were saying in the Dark Crystal, where they were all speaking. I would have loved that version too.
That's interesting. Yeah,
but yeah, narration often kills it.
But I think
tries to save
I guess what I'm getting at is that when you know, consistency. I think just sort of consistency helps, and don't insult or placate because you think that it's for kids. Like that always bugs me.
I think that I agree. And I think there was a better movie in here that was killed by the things you're saying, but hey, it's enough of the vision was retained for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean there's two other little things that kind of got to me. It's just I guess this is also just kind of personal taste. I don't like the kids. And I don't know if I think part of it, what it is, or what is off-putting to me about them, is that, like, Will talks like an adult. And like, not that kids need to not be smart, but it feels like an adult wrote his dialogue. And it doesn't work to me at times. Fair,
but I'm like, oh, wow, this is how I talked, and this is the way my brain worked as a kid. It doesn't feel like they're dumbing down and writing to kids. This feels like me as a kid.
Now, I get that, and I think it's a really hard thing to do, because the trick is to understand that kids' vocabulary is not that as deep or extensive, and so you can get the intelligent expression of things across, but you have to be careful about how they act, like the words they actually use at certain times when they're expressing intelligent thoughts or whatever conversation. And I think that, like, in particular, the conversation on the stairs that Will and Charles, Jason Robards, have feels like it's almost really, really perfect. Because the thing that is happening in that scene is that Will is behaving kind of like the parent in this moment. And that's great. But it just, for me, tipped too far into he's speaking like how an adult would explain it, and it just felt off. And it's a bummer, because it was just so close to exactly what I think that scene needed, but it didn't quite hit it for me.
I had just the opposite reaction.
Yeah.
I'm like, I so related to that kid. Yeah. And
That may be also the issue. Is maybe I was just a really dumb kid and I don't relate to this kid.
Well, it was good casting, I thought, on their part too. I don't know. He felt like he reminded me of me as a kid. I don't know, just kind of like more introspective and, wanting to get in trouble as much as the other kid, but does it a bit more smart. That's a dumb way to say that, but
the other kid I thought was a little too two-dimensional. I think if you took a little bit more of a Huck Finn, Tom Sawyer sort of vibe, and like they didn't. Will more so than Jim, but they didn't quite hit in fully fleshed out characters to me. And I think that was part of what I was like. They just feel a little on the surface. I don't know if that's a product of the actors, being kid actors are. It's a fucking tough game. Man,
I thought that Jim, who played him, did that great job of sort of being like, oh, I'm I want to be treated as an adult. I want to see what's behind this door. But then being three-dimensional by just as simple as you give him that stuff with not having a father. And I thought he played it so well where it wasn't over the top, but you could feel where he was coming from.
I had one thought. I don't know. Tell me what you think of this. There was a part of me that thought the kids, it would have been stronger if the kids were about 3 years older. How old do you think they're supposed to be?
I don't know, 10?
10-ish? For some reason, I think if they were closer to like in the midst of puberty, kind of 13-ish, 13, 14, that maybe I would have been able to kind of get in more with them or felt a little better, but I don't know. It's a taste thing.
Yeah, this was the perfect age for me, they were the perfect age for me to get into it, just as far as I think 10, if that's how old they are, I can't really tell, but that's what I imagined, and I just thought of being that age where it was like you could... That sense of adventure was just that much more graspable, talking on walkie-talkies, that era.
Ultimately, I think what I'm feeling, it is a taste issue, because what I'm realizing is it's the difference between relating to the kids in The Explorers versus relating to the kids in Stand By Me. And I want to watch Stand By Me, right? Like that's more in my personal sensibility of like, it's slightly more adult, but it's still kids trying to figure it out.
See, by having kids that are closer, that the younger age, it works. And then also having parents, for me, that just plays up those themes like we're already talking about of your the kids' world and the parents' world not being separate, and that acknowledgement of your parents being mortal. Like just those few years older, you're this kind of at the age of like, whatever, my old man, da, 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 da. But here you still have that, I don't know, you're closer to that heart side.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, anyway.
You wanna...
I think there was one other thing I was gonna say.
Okay.
Oh shit. What was it? Okay, so there is. I've got it. It really revolves around the kind of the fine. I guess it's not the final chase, but the lead up to Mr. Dark finding them at the library. And as much as I like this sort of the plotting nature of like, Mr. Dark doesn't need to run after them to catch them, and that's ominous and scary. There felt like, to me, there's this whole section of him just kind of standing around. And yeah, he's like, I know you guys are in here, and there's the him just sort of lurking around the library until he finds them. But even when he finds them and he kind of like tugs them around, it never really felt like a real threat to me. And I think part of it is that, and I know this is tricky because it's an aspect of the main themes of the movie, but like Jason Robards is fucking Will's dad, and he's in the room, and he doesn't just go, get the fuck out of here, dude. Like he doesn't put up sort of any resistance in a weird way. It's an intellectual resistance, but it's like if there was a dude coming to literally fucking kidnap your kid, I feel like you would have something more of a resistance to that in a literal way. Like it just something felt like the logic was not quite hitting. Now, if there is a justifiable reason, like, for example, the power, the fear of Mr. Dark is the roadblock to him standing up to him, and that translates, great. But it didn't feel like it was there to the point where I was like, well, dude, why didn't he just fucking go over there and be like, get the fuck out of here?
See, for me, that would not have worked. I loved how it was played because the moment just before is Jason Robards acknowledging the reality of the situation, that this is a magical, like, evil with powerful forces, but not just beyond my understanding, but I have no way of actually physically standing up against. So if right after that moment, all of a sudden he just started yelling and pushing him or something, like, that would not have rung true for me.
No, and that's I agree. It's I think it's actually more what would have made it work for me is in the face of that understanding that I'm up against a foe that is sort of that I'm totally outmatched by. If he had still made some sort of like gesture of an attempt to be like, I'm not okay with this. And that moment, that kind of moment of like resistance just never felt like it really happened. And so when he's just kind of there wounded from this experience and the kids have been taken, it just felt really like, I don't know, just
I thought he was
bummer.
I thought he might have been dead at that point. I was happy he was still alive.
I agree. I was happy too. I mean, the whole tearing the pages out of the book, at 1 page per year of his life that he could have gotten back. I like that.
Yeah.
But I think actually that's the moment where it could have happened. Where something could have happened that felt a little more like a battle. And I don't mean it has to be a physical battle, but I didn't feel like I was really... It felt like Jason Robards was just watching it happen and crumbling. And I wanted him to something. I was like, come on, man, like, I think I was somehow.
I think this is where maybe the moments where, I don't know, maybe in translating to a movie, you could have come up with something that would have done that. But for me, like, I was as much into it as if I imagine how it was when you're reading the book, where since if you're with his internal, like, whatever his thought is, then it's working. But like, I felt like just I could see on his face his sort of understanding of the situation and trying to grapple with it, and thinking all the thoughts of can I get out of this? Probably not. I don't know, any of the things that you're talking about wouldn't have rung as true for me, and I was relating really hard to Jason Robards and what he was doing is what I would be doing.
I think that it's a style choice, and if I were directing that scene, I would have maybe used some of the visual tools, like a little more cutting to Robards' reactions, like getting a little bit more out of those cuts, close-ups, or use the sort of reverse tactic where every time we cut back to Robards as this progresses, we get a little further away from him, so he literally becomes smaller in the frame. Like some sort of tool to just really kind of push the cascading consequences that we're feeling,
or just reflect whatever is going on the inside with him filmically.
And maybe you could get some mileage out of, because they do it a little bit, but getting some more cuts to Will's, how this is hurting Will as well in the moment.
Yeah,
there's a couple of those, and Will eventually yells like, don't do it, Dad," or whatever. But yeah, it never quite landed, and whatever. That's why I left the movie. There's a number of those moments that I just was like, not quite.
I think, I really like that Jack Clayton style of film. You know, we're
maybe
it's
that's
just kind
all
of
it is.
slowly ramping it up. But I do think it was in conflict with kind of the Disney hand coming into play, and maybe that's so. Do you want to get into that for?
Yeah.
What did not?
I'm curious about this. I bet you're right.
All right. Things of note.
Things of note!
This should be interesting.
I can only imagine.
Right.
It's like the age-old tale of the studio being like, you can't do it that way.
So this is right from not the Wikipedia for Something With This Way Comes, but on Jack Clayton. He has like a big block for each of his films on his Wikipedia. So I've just highlighted, I rather than doing the whole thing, I'm going to read about half of it. It's a bit, hang in there. But yeah, some overview, and then we can speak from there. Clayton made the film as a dark thriller, which saw him to return to themes he had explored in earlier films, the supernatural and the exposure of children to evil. However, when he submitted his original cut, the studio expressed strong reservations about its length and pacing and its commercial potential, and Disney then took the unusual step of holding the film back from release for almost a year. Clayton was reportedly sidelined, although he retained his director credit, and Disney spent an additional 6 months and some $5 million overhauling it, performing numerous cuts, removing the original score to make it more quote-unquote family-friendly, and shooting new scenes, in some of which, because of the long delay caused by the reshoots, the two child stars were noticeably older and taller.
I noticed that.
We'll get to that too, yeah. According to the American Film Institute catalog, the film's principal photography took place between September 28th and December 1981, with additional sequences shot in late 1982 and early 1983. The version of the film released in late April 1983 was a compromise between Disney's insistence on a commercial film with, quote, family appeal and Clayton's original, darker vision of the story. To reduce costs, original editor Argyle Nelson Jr. was fired and assistant editor Barry Gordon was promoted to replace him. Gordon was given the task of re-editing the film, and at Disney's insistence, he was obliged to remove some of Clayton's completed scenes. The most prominent casualty was the pioneering computer-generated animation sequence that was to have opened the film, which depicted the empty train bearing Dark's Carnival arriving in the town and magically unfolding itself into place. The much heralded sequence would have been the first significant use of the new technology in a major Hollywood...
No, keep going. Keep going. I'm just shaking my head because this is fucking annoying that this shit happens.
But it was almost entirely deleted, and in the final cut, only one brief CGI shot was retained. Another Clayton sequence that was removed featured a giant disembodied hand that had reached into the boys' room and tried to grab them. This was deleted by the studio on the grounds that the mechanical effect was not realistic enough, and it was replaced by a newly filmed sequence in which the boys' room is invaded by spiders. In 2012... co-star Sean Carson, side note, in 2012, co-star Sean Carson recalled the harrowing experience of having to film the new scene, which was entirely done using real-life spiders. Bradbury was asked to write new opening narration to help clarify the story, and new special effects were inserted, including the cloud tank storm effects. Last but not least, another major disappointment for both Clayton and his musical collaborator, Georges Delerue, was the loss of the original score, which Disney rejected as being too dark. It was removed at the studio's insistence and replaced by a new score written by James Horner. So you can see why I asked you about the score earlier, Tim.
Man, it's such a weird thing because I feel like James Horner has done some good stuff.
Well, it's a good score, but it's just what Disney wanted and wasn't,
right,
I think.
Right.
So I thought as a fun A-B, do you want to compare the two scores?
Hell yeah.
All right, so
there's access to the old score?
Yeah, it was released in I think in 2011, something like that, for the first time ever. Got out of the vault somehow.
Damn.
So here's a link to that. We know we'll play the. Okay, so here's the original music. Here's an example of the score as it actually is. Sorry, not the original. Here's an example of the score by James Horner upon Disney's finding of a new composer. So this is how it is in the movie now. And now, here's a little listen to Georges Delerue original score, deemed too creepy, too creepy for family-friendly audiences. Pretty eerie, right? In comparison.
Definitely more haunting. Like, no question about that.
Straight haunting strings like that. Ugh.
There's a different sort of musical, I don't know, I mean, like, how to describe this in musical theory terms, but, like, there's definitely a less, a less typical chord change style. It's much, much darker and ominous and, unexpected. And I think that's what you want in something like this from a score, rather than a paint by numbers score, which seems to be kind of what we ended up with.
The painting, just as in what was the Norman Rockwell feel.
Right, yeah.
The safety of that I keep wanting to say original, the score as it is now, the released
the
score.
Released score, yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. How much music can affect the outcome of a viewing is insane.
So would you say that Georges Leroux's original score would have been more fitting for you? Not as you put it, dumbing down so much?
I certainly think it would have helped.
Yeah. Well,
I think it also would have created a consistency potentially that I was, missing.
And I mean, do you also think hearing about how Clayton was taken off the project and
that's just unacceptable.
He had, it says, Clayton's version of it, his vision of it was darker overall.
Yeah. Well, I guess at the end of the day, it's, I'm just not surprised.
Right.
I think we've said this before, where it's like we kind of come to this conclusion when we start to dig in, where we go, whoa, why did that movie feel so fucked up and clunky and just not work in certain moments? Like, it really killed the movie and we ended up not liking it or whatever. And then we read into it a little bit and it's like, it's always the same bullshit. The fucking, some producer or studio people got involved and just said no and hacked up the original vision and turned it into something not as good.
I know. I feel like out of all that, you hear a lot of it, release the Snyder cut of all these
right.
alternate cuts, director's cuts that exist. This was right up there now for the ones I wish I could see. I think next to The Cable Guy. I want to see Ben Stiller's original cut of that. It was supposed to be much darker.
Holy shit, that's interesting. I didn't know that existed.
Yeah. But I know it's a shame what this movie could have been, because you think of The Innocents, and Jack Clayton being allowed to see through his vision, and you can totally feel, I don't know, I can imagine Disney just trying to redo that film and it being like this,
I mean, shit, The Innocents was 20 years earlier.
Yeah. It was, he had a stroke in the mid 70s and this was his passion project. So he, I think, had recovered in the early 80s and finally was able to make this film.
There's some, the history of this as a story is really fascinating to me, because it says here that Bradbury actually wrote the screenplay for this in 1958.
Yeah, it was a big old honking version that he's just trying to get made with Kirk Douglas.
That's crazy. And then that screenplay got turned into the novelized version. So that's pretty unusual.
Yeah.
Huh. That's wild. And then obviously it just sort of sat in, wherever it sat for 20 years. And
yeah.
That's crazy to me. I mean, it's cool.
Finally came out. So we also have for things of note, Tim, is where we try to mention any indelible moments.
Yeah.
So you were laughing over it. I wanted to make sure. Indelible moments is what I said.
Yes.
And so the one that stood out to me is actually explained by this, where I was so taken out of it and thought it was so weird that like at the end of the spider scene or whatever, or during it, like they wake up in bed and are clearly older. And
Yes.
I thought it was like different actors, the dark-haired boy.
I did too. I thought it was legitimately new people.
Yeah, I thought we were like, oh, wow. So because something about the magic just made them grow up 5 years or whatever. And
Right.
this is where the story's going. And then it was just not addressed. I was so... It's very, very indelible. And I'd also say then just on top of that, the kind of the moments I mentioned earlier, anything involving the blood and him seeing his decapitated self for a kid's movie were pretty indelible.
I think Jonathan Pryce's death really was the one for me.
Yeah.
I mean, probably actually just his little husk body getting picked up and taken away at the end is really the thing that stands out. I love that.
Yeah. This is so silly, but like it's just the kind of weird thing. I don't know. It's just kind of interesting. Is the boys who played the two boys? The boy who's the blonde one was brown haired, and the boy who's brown haired was actually blonde haired. So they dyed their hairs opposing colors so that he could be a little blonde boy with glasses and he could be a boy with dark hair.
Wow.
It's just like so weird.
It's just so random.
Wow,
but
we just died.
Sure.
Right? Like, it's that important.
Well, could you also have just swapped that one line where it matters, where Jonathan Pryce says, like, this boy has dark jet black hair and this boy is toe-headed or whatever he says. Like, couldn't you just change the line?
Apparently not.
I guess not.
Just dye these kids' hair.
That's so funny. Oh, well.
Great. Well, I mean, that's what I had for things to note, was just kind of that interesting, the movie that could have been always tragic.
Ugh. No kidding.
Great.
What a bummer. That stuff always really just hurts my soul.
Well, anything else for Something Wicked This Way Comes, Tim?
No.
Great. Then I think we're safe to move on to our RecommenDEADtions. What would you like to recommend this week?
That is a good question. What would I like to recommend dead? Let's see. Did I watch anything exciting this week? Not really. I started Preacher. Have you heard of Preacher?
Isn't it a comic book?
It was a comic book, yep. And I guess it was FX, I think, did a series on it that I never got around to. So I watched the pilot yesterday or the day before. And, dude, it's gory and fun. It's really fucking well shot. Like, cool. Just the look and aesthetic I really, really liked. We'll see if I, stick with it, but there's some really good gore, and it's got just a hint of humor within the gore that I love. So it's, kind of harkens back to a little bit of that Evil Dead 2 style. It's not quite as slapsticky as that, but it's just enough of a hint of some of that fun, humor within the gore that I quite like. So yeah, I'd say check it out. At least watch the first episode because it's pretty fucking fun.
Of what again?
Preacher.
Great. I will recommend Dead. I was very taken aback by this film on Saturday morning. I'll try to I don't know, Saturday mornings I've gotten the habit of going to the Criterion Collection streaming service and trying to find something that's not super heavy, or maybe, they have like a Saturday matinee section. But they had been talking up this film called Tokyo Olympiad, a documentary. I thought of you during this, Tim, so I'm like especially recommending to you recommending this to you. But do you are you aware, like, throughout the history of the Olympics, they've almost often had a film being made at the same time, sort of documenting them, or there's like a long history of films on the Olympics?
No, not really. I mean, I guess I kind of vaguely, I don't know, never thought about it, but it makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah, no, and boy, I've never gotten into the Olympics. It's kind of like any sports. They're something I could appreciate, and
I love
imagine
the Summer Olympics.
I know, I could really imagine you being into them. But Tim, if they were all done this way, like, oh my God, I'd so into it. But I mean, I gotta recommend it recommend it for the. Is so well done. There's like an intermission. It's this epic 3-hour, coverage of the whole. I think it's the 1964 Summer Olympics in Tokyo, and the way, just kind of it's you could say it's heavy-handed, but for me it was just the way it was just cinematic and boisterous, of just really getting the ideas across, of just like when all the countries were marching at the beginning, and even like the delivery of the torch. It was super moving and emotional, just like the display of humanity it all was, and just all the countries like cheering each other on, like, that not having division in that sense. And then, ended on the similar note of everyone's waving, little white handkerchiefs or whatever. So, I mean, that just, it really, really got to me. It really, made me feel a lot. And then on top of all that is just, then they go through each of the events, and just incredibly shot. Like, this film, the way it's shot and edited is just some of the most like stunning shooting and editing I've ever seen in anything. Like, I cannot understate it, or overstate it, I guess.
You can't overstate it, but you can understate it.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of anything else to say about it other than you should check it out. Tokyo.
Do you remember
Olympiad.
who made it? Like, who was the
U.S. wins a bunch because there's so many people. I guess that's how it kind of works in the Olympics. But then they didn't always win. Is there an overall winner each year? I didn't know that.
No. What I meant is, like, who made the documentary?
Oh, who made the documentary?
Is it like an American made? Is it an American company? Or is it like a sort of? It was a filmmaker. It
was a Japanese production done by a Japanese filmmaker named Kon Ichikawa, who is kind of known as being, like, he could have been up there basically if. At the Kurosawas and the famous Japanese directors, but he had such a huge output because he was really kind of like the for-hire studio guy. But from all his collective, he does have like a handful of kind of films where he was able to sort of put an artistic vision more on it, or I guess better put, he more deeply cared about the sort of themes involved in it and sort of really went all out. So Tokyo Olympiad is one of his main ones where he's able to do that. Kon Ichikawa's Tokyo Olympiad. And talk about studio meddling. Apparently there's another version of it where the Japanese government or whoever like went in and like try to make something just much more stoic and deliberate, and like just highlighting all the Japanese,
of course,
wins and like that angle. You gotta watch it. It's great.
Cool.
All right. Well, that's for that. How about next week's film? Let's figure it out.
Let's figure it out by first figuring out what I did with the hat.
Wow, that was a Nickelodeon show. You just brought me back. It's called Figure It Out.
Really?
And they'd say it just like that.
Okay, I've got the hat. Is it your turn or my turn?
I think it's your turn.
Okay, then I'll just reach in here and this one. Oh shit, dog. Going back to 2015. This is a film called Demon.
Demon?
Yeah.
It's like, yep, there it is.
Yeah. I love me some demon stuff.
Yeah.
We'll see if it's any good.
Yeah, I mean, who knows?
Who knows? 2015 could be a real hit or miss.
Polish film.
Oh, shit. No,
Cool.
I know about this movie.
So,
It's really fucked up, and I believe this is the movie that the director died before it was finished.
wow.
I think that we'll find out, but I think this is that movie, and there's some, there's obviously like lore about like maybe he shouldn't have made a movie about satanic possession stuff. Like there are people who are like, well, it got him. I think that's this movie, so we'll check it out. But if it is, then cool.
Great. Demon. All right.
Yeah.
I've been having fun with this. We don't have separate seasons, but as far as like our batches of hat pulls, this has been the second one's been fun.
I know, right?
It all has been, but it's exciting. We still have all this territory to traverse.
Definitely.
Great.
Cool, dude.
All right. Well, that's it, guys. Let's just wrap it up then. In closing, and in wrapping it up, thank you so much for listening.
And we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.